So I got this comment last week from user Shadow Monarch for life that said, and I quote, Jin Woo would solo the entire Resident Evil universe blindfolded. Look, I get it. You've seen this guy go from world's worst hunter to basically a god in his universe. And now you think he's unbeatable? That's adorable. But let's actually think about this critically for a second. What happens when your precious Shadow Monarch steps into a world where the enemies don't politely wait in dungeons? They hunt you, they infect you, and they transform you in ways that the system couldn't even give you an answer for. Before you rage comment, Jin Woo stops. Let's take a realistic look at whether solo leveling's protagonist would actually survive or thrive in the biological nightmare that is Resident Evil. Before we pit Jin Woo against Resident Evil monsters, we have to clarify which versions of Jin Woo we're going to be using for this video. If we're dropping E-rank pre-system Jin Woo into Raccoon City, he's zombie food in about an hour or even minutes. The world's weakest hunter has stats barely above any normal human. Strength, agility, and intelligence all hovering around the 10 to 12 points, where even average E-rank hunters had mana levels between 70 to 100. His only advantages were slightly above average's senses, and that he was stubborn. In a world where a single bite means game over, early Jin Woo simply lacks the tools to survive. This isn't even a debate. E-rank Jin Woo was struggling to fight the weakest magical beast. In his own world, he's not handling a corridor filled with zombies and lickers all rushing him at the same time. But what makes this interesting is Jin Woo's potential for growth. Unlike Leon Kennedy or Chris Redfield, who might get slightly better weapons as they progress, Jin Woo fundamentally transformed. So let's see how Jin Woo would fare in Resident Evil as he progresses through the system. So if you enjoy coming with me to see if I agree or disagree with Shadow Monarch for life, maybe like and subscribe, I don't know, it's up to you, I don't care. But wait, things get interesting when we think about Jin Woo's system-granted abilities. The detoxification skill alone could completely change his survival odds against Resident Evil's viral threats. So let's see how an early Resident Evil villain and an early Jin Woo would go against each other. Mendez, big guy, yeah, him. The imposing village chief from Resident Evil 4 would be one of the first major challenges for developing Jin Woo. Let's say Jin Woo has activated the system, but hasn't unlocked his Necromancer class yet. So he's roughly equivalent to a Class C hunter. In his human form, Mendez is unnaturally strong. He's able to pick up Leon and throw him around and tank gunshots like they're like they're nothing. But then when he's damaged, he turns into this weird centipede-looking thing where his spine is his only weakness. Early system Jin Woo would have a crucial skill like sprint for mobility, vital strike for targeting weak points, and stealth to avoid direct confrontation when needed. Most importantly, he'd have detoxification and tenacity as passive skills. The fight would be tough but winnable. Vital Strike is practically designed for exploiting weak points like Mendez's exposed spine. His enhanced speed from sprint would let him dodge Mendez's powerful but telegraphed attacks. If he takes heavy damage, Tenacity reduces all damage by 50% when his health drops below 30. It's like a perfect last stand skill because I know I kept dying in the barn scene in the final fight against Mendez. Why does he have aimbot? What about the Las Plagas infection? This is where detoxification comes in. The skill grants immunity against any sort of like poison, so I'm guessing it would work against a zombie outbreak. It works against harmful substances and all diseases, which would likely include the parasitic infection like Las Plagas. Jin Woo's body would automatically cleanse the parasite before it could take hold. The system fundamentally changes the equation in Resident Evil. Where infected is often biggest threat, Jin Woo can make mistakes that would be fatal for Leon or Chris and still walk away unscathed. By the time he reaches C rank equivalency, Mendez would be a challenge, but ultimately just another boss to overcome. And if Jin Woo unlocks the skill, Mendez just might end up being another shadow that Jin Woo resurrects. But I guess in the game, Leon gets bit a bunch of times and he just sprays himself and he's fine, so. But speaking of overpowered abilities, let's kick things up a notch. What happens when a newly minted Shadow Monarch faces one of Resident Evil's most iconic stalkers? Let's wait for this unstoppable force to meet this immovable object. Mr. X is the stuff of nightmares for Resident Evil 2 players, me included. I remember crying playing this on my computer for the first time. Why is his footsteps so loud? His heavy footsteps following you through the Raccoon Police Department, punching through walls if necessary. No, like seriously, like I think I peed my pants. This created some of the most tense moments in gaming history, but how would he fare against Jin Woo after a job change quest? At this point, Jin Woo is roughly equivalent to an A-rank hunter. With his foundation of shadow soldiers, egress, tank, and iron, Mr. X's primary advantages are his relentless pursuit, superhuman strength, and an incredible durability. His standard issue Tyrant trenchcoat even deflects some bullets. When damaged enough, he transforms into the Super Tyrant, with increased speed, aggression, and that massive claw. This is where things get unfair for poor Mr. X. Jin Woo now has Shadow Exchange. This allows him to basically trade places with any of his shadows at any given moment. The classic Tyrant strategy of cornering prey becomes completely inefficient. Jin Woo could position any of his shadows in any part of the RPD and just teleport away. But this does have a limitation, he can't use it multiple times. But say he gets into a sticky situation, he slips up, he's stuck in a corner, boom, he's gone. He's on the absolute opposite side. But Jin Woo wouldn't just run. With Egress, an A-rank equivalent knight, and Tank, a durable frontline fighter, at his disposal, he could set up devastating ambushes. While Mr. X pursues Jin Woo, Egress could attack from behind with his sword, targeting the tyrant's weak points. And Jin Woo might be in charge of all these guys, but I don't know if you saw in the fight against him and Egress, Egress was piecing him up. I know he wasn't at his strongest then, but Mr. X isn't surviving that. When Mr. X transforms into Super Tyrant, revealing his exposed heart, it's practically gift wrap for Jin Woo's Vital Strike. Combined with Ruler's authority to telekinetically manipulate objects in the environment, maybe dropping debris on Mr. X, the Tyrant would find himself outmatched tactically and with raw power. Here's the terrifying part for Resident Evil universe. If Jin Woo defeats Mr. X, he could potentially extract his shadow. Imagine a shadow of Mr. X under Jin Woo's control, with all of his strength and none of the programming limitations. The hunter truly becomes the hunted. And hey, if you liking this little breakdown so far, maybe like and subscribe, and if you're not liking it, don't be too mean in the comments, I'll cry. But Mr. X is just a brute force enemy. What about threats that rely on more insidious methods? Let's see how Jin Woo would handle one of Resident Evil's most disturbing families. The Baker family, Jack, Marguerite, and Lucas, present a unique type of horror for Resident Evil. Once ordinary people, they were corrupted by Eveline's mold, gaining superhuman regeneration and twisted desires. Their isolated property becomes a nightmare playground where they hunt Ethan Winters. But let's say, hey, Ethan and Sung Jin Woo did a little switcheroo. Sung Jin Woo encounters them. Let's say he's an A-rank hunter by now with his core shadow soldiers. This is a particularly interesting matchup because the Baker's primary advantage, their extreme regeneration, creates a war. Jack Baker can recover from seemingly fatal wounds, including being set on fire, having his face chainsawed, and even being blown apart. But Jin Woo's shadows can be resummoned indefinitely as long as they have mana. It becomes a battle of biological regeneration versus magical resummon, and Jin Woo clearly has the advantage here. Egress could engage Jack directly, matching his strength and weapon skills, and outmatching them. Sorry, I'm not going to put them on the same level. It's Egress. I already talked him up a second ago. Tank could absorb punishment that would kill a normal human, and Iron could provide defensive support. And Jin Woo himself, if he gets cornered, he's real tired or something, he's like, oh no, Jack, don't kill me, just one second. Shadow exchange again. It doesn't matter. Marguerite presents a different challenge with her insect swarms and wall crawling abilities. But again, Jin Woo's shadows don't breathe and likely can't be infected or poisoned by her insects. Tusk, if Jin Woo has acquired him by this point, could use area effect magic to clear swarms of insects, while Egress and the others focus on Marguerite herself. And before we move on, we have our nice lovely guy B.O.W here. I'm just gonna say, he's a more deadly insect than any of these things, and Marguerite herself. He murdered everyone. Lucas Baker, with his traps and puzzles, would be frustrated by Jin Woo's ability to send expendable shadows ahead to trigger traps safely. And Ruler's authority could also potentially disarm traps from a distance by manipulating their components telekinetically. You guys don't understand. That just took me 20 tries to try to read. And me telling you guys it took me 20 tries to read, that took me about 20 tries. The most fascinating aspect is the mold itself. Jin Woo's detoxification would likely prevent him from being infected or controlled by the mold. Removing the primary vector through which the Bakers maintain their power, he could potentially end their suffering permanently, and maybe add them to his shadow army afterward. But what about enemies that rely on speed, intellect, rather than just brute force or regeneration? Let's see how Jin Woo would fare against the most dangerous human in Resident Evil history. I'm talking about Mr. Monologue himself, Albert Wesker. Hey man. Albert Wesker is a different caliber of threat. Enhanced by a prototype virus, he possesses superhuman speed, strength, reflexes, and regeneration. He can dodge bullets at point blank, and move faster than the human eye can even track. Add that to his genius level, intellect, and battle IQ, you have Resident Evil's most dangerous human villain right here. For this matchup, let's consider Jin Woo at S-rank level, with elite shadows like B.O.W, the Ant King, and Tusk, the High Orc Shaman. Wesker's primary advantage is his speed, which allows him to overwhelm opponents before they can even react. But S-rank Jin Woo operates on the same level as speed, or 10 times faster. More importantly, B.O.W, who single-handedly defeated multiple S-rank hunters before becoming Jin Woo's shadow, could match or exceed Wesker's speed, and I'm heavily weighing on the exceeding his speed. The fight would be a blur to normal observers, two superhuman entities exchanging blows faster than the eye can follow. But Jin Woo has advantages that Wesker just can't match. He has the Army of Shadows, he has Shadow Exchange, and he has Dragon Sphere that could disrupt Wesker completely. Wesker's tactical genius and combat experience would keep him in the fight longer than most, but he'd eventually realize he's outmatched. If he injected himself with Ouroboros in desperation, transforming into his mutated form with the glowing orange core, he would literally have a perfect shoot here sign for Jin Woo to use his Vital Strike. Wesker's dependence on serums to maintain his viral stability might be his ultimate downfall. Jin Woo's intelligence and observation skills could lead him to notice patterns in Wesker's fighting style, or signs signs of strain that hint at his dependency. The outcome though, Wesker, he could hold a good fight for a little bit until Jin Woo started aura farming and then just piecing him up completely. And not to dwell on this much longer, but Shadow Wesker, I don't want to see that. That's terrifying. Let's raise the stakes and see how Jin Woo would handle Resident Evil's most relentless pursuer, a B.O.W, specifically designed to hunt and eliminate targets with extreme prejudice. The Nemesis T-type represents the pinnacle of Umbrella's early B.O.W development, a tyrant host infected by the NEA parasite, granting it intelligence, adaptability, and the ability to use weapons while maintaining overwhelming strength and regeneration. It's single-minded, it just pursues star members. For this confrontation, let's consider S-rank Jin Woo once again, with his full army of shadow soldiers. Nemesis's initial form, armed with a rocket launcher and tentacle attack, would present a significant threat to normal humans, but as we know, Sung Jin Woo isn't normal. He could send B.O.W with his fight capabilities, incredible speed to engage Nemesis directly. Tusk could provide range magical support, while Egress and other combat-oriented shadows for a defensive perimeter. Jin Woo himself could analyze Nemesis' attack pattern, looking for openings. Dragon's Fear might momentarily stagger the B.O.W, creating opportunities for concentrated attacks. Shadow Exchange would let Jin Woo escape if Nemesis tried to grab him with his tentacle. And as Nemesis takes damage and transforms into different variations of himself, he follows the exact pattern as every other Resident Evil monster. He keeps getting bigger, but then also that little target keeps getting a lot bigger. It gets a lot less little. And then Sung Jin Woo comes in with the regular Vital Strike and gets him out. The final form of Nemesis, the giant blob, which in the game requires a specialized railgun to defeat, might present the biggest challenge, but Sung Jin Woo's ruler authority could potentially manipulate parts of the environment or even the railgun itself if necessary. But alternatively, if we just combine all the firepower of the whole Shadow army, I think that's enough to take out Nemesis. If Sung Jin Woo manages to extract Nemesis' Shadow after the battle, he's gained an incredibly powerful tool. A Shadow with Nemesis' tracking abilities, his fighting abilities, his tentacle for... I don't know if he really wants that, but he has it now. Either way, he has a completely loyal Nemesis in his Shadow army. But what about enemies that don't rely on physical confrontation at all? Let's see how Jin Woo would handle one of Resident Evil's most insidious threats. A bioweapon designed to infiltrate and control from within, and look like a little girl or an old woman, and is kind of gross and melts. Eveline. We're talking about Eveline, yeah. Eveline is the central antagonist of Resident Evil 7. She represents a different kind of threat entirely. Designed as a bioweapon that appears as a young girl, her primary power is mind control through the specialized fungus known as mold. Mold. I'm talking about the mold. She doesn't fight directly. She infects, controls, and creates family. She created this lovely family right here. She creates a family by dominating the wills of those around her. This presents an interesting challenge for Jin Woo. Physical strength and combat skills are less relevant against an enemy that attacks the mind itself, but Jin Woo has a unique defense against this. Kandaria's Blessing, Kandra's Blessing, Kandra's something blessing. It explicitly prevents abnormal status effects and grants immunity to all diseases and harmful substances. The mold would likely fall under those categories, making Jin Woo immune to Eveline's primary method of control. Even if the mold could somehow establish itself in his body, his detoxification ability would completely purge it. Beyond these system-granted immunities, Jin Woo has demonstrated exceptional mental fortitude. He's resisted the lure of absolute power and maintained his humanity despite becoming increasingly godlike. Literally in the manga, spoiler alert, he's told that no matter what, he'll end up becoming this dark ruler. And he's just like, nah, I'm cool. Eveline's molded creatures are humanoided monsters formed from the mold. You're like, oh, maybe these things can swarm him and fight him. And no, now he actually can keep his shadow soldiers busy with other fighters. B.O.W alone could probably eliminate dozens of them without breaking a sweat. But you know, we want to have the other ones a little bit of time to have fun. Now they have some practice. They don't have to just keep beating each other up. The most interesting part would be the final confrontation, when Eveline loses control and transforms into the massive, grotesque mold creature with a giant face. Jin Woo wouldn't need the specialized Albert 01 handgun. His shadows could target the exposed face and eyes directly, while Jin Woo himself could use ruler authority to manipulate objects in the environment as improvised weapons. The outcome? Eveline's most potent weapon would be neutralized by Jin Woo's unique resistance, leaving her physically outmatched by the Shadow Monarch in his army. Now let's see how Jin Woo would go against this incredible, really gross, scary lady. Not incredible, wow. Who said that? Let's see how Jin Woo would do against Lady Dimitrescu. I think I said it right. I looked it up. Lady D stands out literally and figuratively among Resident Evil villains. At 9 feet tall and 6 inches with heels on, this aristocratic vampire mutant and her 3 daughters created some of the most memorable moments in Resident Evil Village. I just remember being dragged into the castle. I'm like, no, stop, please. Just kidding. For this encounter, let's consider S-rank Jin Woo with his elite shadow like B.O.W and Tusk. Lady Dimitrescu's primary strength are her near invulnerability vulnerability due to her regenerative capabilities. Wow, that was a tongue twister, wow. Lady D's primary strengths are her near invulnerability due to her regenerative capabilities, superhuman strength, and retractable razor-sharp claws that can slice her arm off. This surprised me so much in the playthrough, that was scary. Her daughters, which are swarms of carnivorous flies given human form that look very, they're women, yeah. Add another layer of threat with their ability to dissipate and reform. And then not to mention that if we put B.O.W against them, they ain't standing a chance. Jin Woo's intelligence and observational skills would likely lead him to discover Lady D's weakness, the Dagger of Death's Flowers, which can nullify her regeneration. Even without it, his shadow army could effectively handle her daughter. Tusk's magical ability might include cold-based attacks that could slow or solidify the daughters, making them vulnerable to direct damage. Against Lady D herself, Jin Woo would rely on mobility and coordinated attacks. B.O.W could engage her directly, matching her strength, while Jin Woo uses Shadow Exchange to avoid her sweeping claw attacks. If Jin Woo acquires the Dagger of Death's Flowers, he could use Vital Strike to ensure it strikes true. When Lady Dimitrescu transforms into her massive dragon-like mutation with her humanoid torso exposed on its back, she presents a larger but more vulnerable target. Wow, I can't talk. She presents a larger but more vulnerable target. B.O.W's flight capabilities would be perfect for attacking this exposed weak point, while Tusk provides range support and other shadows manage any additional threats. The outcome would be a spectacular but ultimately one-sided battle. Lady D's intimidating presence and regenerative abilities can only go so far, while formidable against normal humans would be countered by Jin Woo's tactical advantages and overwhelming firepower. But next, let's examine a villain who brings something different to the table. Technological genius, combined with magnetic powers that could potentially counter Jin Woo's conventional strategies. Carl Heisenberg stands out as one of Resident Evil's most unique monsters on this list. For this combination of scientific genius and magnetic powers, unlike purely biological threats, Heisenberg controls metal with his mind, commands an army of cyborg soldiers, and eventually transforms into a massive metal flesh hybrid. This creates an interesting tactical problem for Jin Woo. Some of Jin Woo's weapons and maybe his shadows contain some metal that Heisenberg could manipulate. For this matchup, let's consider high S-rank Jin Woo with his full shadow army. So they both have the big main guy that can transform into the scary guy, and then they all have armies. It seems like a perfect matchup for me. Heisenberg's control over metal and electricity would make direct confrontation risky. Jin Woo's dagger could be turned against him, and any metal components in his or his shadows equipment could be a liability. However, Jin Woo has his own telekinetic ability and ruler's authority, which could create fascinating duels of wills if Heisenberg tried to control Jin Woo's weapons. The shadow soldiers themselves being magical constructs rather than physical entities might be particularly or wholly resistant to Heisenberg's magnetism. Shadows like B.O.W would rely more on his natural weapons like his claws than metal weapons because that'd be less than ideal for this fight. Heisenberg's army of metal zombie soldiers would be easily overwhelmed by Jin Woo's vastly larger and more powerful shadow army. When Heisenberg transforms into his massive metal flesh hybrid form, the glowing red weak points on his body would be obvious targets for Jin Woo's Vital Strike and the concentrated attacks of his shadows. Jin Woo's Shadow Exchange would be crucial for avoiding Heisenberg's powerful but telegraphed attacks, allowing him to teleport away from danger and reposition counterattacks. The outcome would ultimately favor Jin Woo, though Heisenberg's unique abilities would make for an interesting fight. But for our final matchup, let's examine one of the most calculating and manipulative villains in the Resident Evil universe, a cult leader whose parasitic control extends through an entire region. Saddler, and first name, Osmund Saddler. Saddler, the charismatic leader of the Los Illuminados, presents a different kind of threat. His power comes not just from his own dominant strain of Las Plagas, but from his absolute control over all other infected individuals and B.O.Ws in his domain. For this final fight, let's consider peak Shadow Monarch Jin Woo, fully awakened with all the powers, the whole shebang, if you will. Saddler's primary advantage here is his vast army of Plagas-infected Gandos, cultists, and specialized B.O.Ws like the Vertigo and Garradors. Yeah. But it's not comparable. Jin Woo commands an army of millions. Almost every single shadow is probably stronger than any of the villagers, including incredibly powerful shadows like Belion, Ashbourne's former Grand Marshal. This is not just a battle of individuals, but a war of armies, and Jin Woo's forces are overwhelmingly superior. Jin Woo's immunity to diseases and toxins through detoxification and Candelier's blessing would render him immune to the Las Plagas infection, removing Saddler's primary vector of control. His shadows, being non-biological, would have a similar immunity. When Saddler abandons his human form for his massive spider-like mutation with multiple eyes serving as weak points, he becomes more powerful but also more vulnerable. The exposed eyeballs on his legs and central eye would be obvious targets for Jin Woo's shadows. B.O.W could fly around Saddler targeting eyes while avoiding tentacle strikes. Tusk could bombard him with magic from a safe distance. At his peak, Jin Woo possesses abilities like dimensional travel, light speed movement, and strength capable of affecting continental landmasses. These transcendent powers put him so far beyond Saddler that the fight becomes almost comical in its mismatch. Jin Woo could potentially end the battle before it even starts. With one overwhelming attack, he destroys everything, but you know him, he just has to aura farm first. The aftermath would be the complete dismantling of Los Illuminados Illuminados. Any surviving cultists would be freed from Plaga's control, and Saddler himself might join Jin Woo's Shadow Army. Okay, sorry Shadow Monarch for life, you win this one. Jin Woo, even at his weakest, could defeat some of Resident Evil's monsters, but when he gets to that full Shadow Monarch point, he's destroying everything. So yeah, Jin Woo from solo leveling would completely wipe the floor with this place. Resident Evil, I love you, but solo leveling, you're different. So hey, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and if you like this one, you're definitely gonna like this video too.